Oh, hello, Cannabis friends and fam. This is so dope. I'm just so glad everybody's here. My name is Karen Meshkov. I am the Director of Business Development at FlowerHire. I'm just going to take a second to talk just a little bit about what brings me to this conversation. I use she and her as my pronouns. My friends and my colleagues in this industry call me K-Mesh, and that's because I am not a Karen. What I am is a Philly girl. I was born and raised, and I live and work. Before I came to cannabis, I was a small business owner and an entrepreneur in the health and wellness space. And it was in that setting that I really became aware that the cannabis is medicine, and that there are people who've been using this plant to help and heal themselves for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Might be getting my history wrong. It was around the same time that I became awoke to the issues of racial injustice and white supremacy that underscore our American experience. I co-produced a documentary in 2012 about the intersection of mass incarceration, systemic racism, and the drug war called Broken on All Sides. In 2015, I started a transracial family. I have a 5-year-old son named Asa. He is Black, and I am his white adoptive mother. And since I was chosen by his birth mother, Samantha, I have humbly walked the path of being a white ally in the fight to end racial injustice. So this is the work that motivates me every day in my role at FlowerHire as Director of Business Development. We are on a mission to build a more conscious cannabis community, one hire at a time. And I am so excited to introduce the inimitable Christine Dela Rosa to the main stage. Hey, Christine.
Hi, K-Mesh.
Welcome, and thank you. For those of you who don't know Miss Chris, she is an operator, activist, and advocate. She's the CEO and co-founder of the famed People's Dispensary with locations in Portland and Oakland. TPD is well known across the industry for this incredible visionary model that they have built by doing well by doing good. A couple things that make TPD unique. They have one of the most diverse BIPOC leadership cannabis teams in the industry. They have an extensive community empowerment program. They have a jobs model for returning citizens and a unique fundraising, like grassroots fundraising model, which allows people to own equity in her company for as little as $1,000. Christine her work is informed by a background in tech and entrepreneurship and her deeply personal connection to the plant. She had, unfortunately, very debilitating complications from undiagnosed lupus. She went on a journey of self-healing with CBD and THC, and over the course of 9 months, healed herself, got off opioids and other pharmaceuticals, and went into remission, where she is, thank God, healthy to this day. And that was the start of Christine's journey to educate, empower, and destigmatize the plant, especially for communities of color. Christine is an advisory board member of the Access and Innovation Project, Cannabis Doing Good, and Regenibus. She's also a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI Committee for the NCIA, and she's a regular presenter at such places as South by Southwest, Hall of Flowers, MJ BizCon, the list goes on. The topic of today's talk is gender parity in the C-suite, getting to gender parity via anti-racist and inclusive strategies. Christine, this topic is a large and complex one, and we're so grateful to have someone with the depth of your experience, perspective to help us understand what's happening on the vanguard. So I know you've been working very closely with the NCIA and the Arcview group, two of the industry's most respected thought leadership and policy groups, on some white papers, and I thought that would be a good place for us to start.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for that intro, K-Mesh. I appreciate it. Thanks to FlowerHire for having me here, and thank you to NCIA and Arcview who sponsored these papers. These are 5 papers that we've put together with a group of about 14 women who wrote them, and they are being released starting today, actually. And took us 9 months to write them. So they're very much all volunteer work, by the way. So let's make sure that's clear. They did take us 9 months to do it. And the paper that I co-wrote was the gender parity in the C-suite, and also co-wrote equity, how to get equity in your business. I mean, I wrote 2 of those papers alongside other writers. And to me, they're very groundbreaking because they really tackle issues that are very specific to women, to LGBTQIA people, to BIPOC women in the cannabis industry that we're facing today. I think that we have a video. This is one of my co-authors, and I thought it was a really great moment for her when she was putting together the video of what we did, the 3 of us, the 3 women that wrote this paper.
I'm from New York, and I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I can confidently say that in the United States and in many other countries, we have not reached gender equality, especially not in leadership or positions of power. In the US, women make up 51% of the population and 58% of the workforce. Yet, in Fortune 500 companies, we make up only 6% of CEOs. And if we look at cannabis, we make up 8% of CEOs. That means that in today's cannabis industry, 92% of CEOs are male. Working in Canatech, supply chain, and sales, I'm still often the only woman in the room. This paper series provides research on the fiscal benefits of having a diverse leadership team. Companies with more women in leadership roles are consistently more profitable. Women-led startups produce more than twice the revenue for every dollar invested. The cannabis industry will have more financial success with diverse leadership and ownership, but we won't get there without a conscious and concerted commitment to see the task through to completion. This paper series provides tools and roadmaps on how you can contribute to identifying and dismantling systemic roadblocks. We will all benefit from having more women, and especially women of color, in positions of leadership and ownership. The cannabis industry can and must set an example. Join us in creating a truly inclusive, equitable, and anti-racist industry.
Beautiful, beautiful, and challenging stats there. Christine, do you want to start us off and sort of talk about some of the things in that video, or we can talk about DEI wherever you want to jump off from?
Oh, sure. I just think that when we're talking about gender parity in the C-suite, when we're talking about gender parity in the cannabis industry, we have a really unique opportunity because we are, in the legal side of the market, a nascent industry. And in order for us to learn from other industries' mistakes, we really need to see what exactly is happening. In 2003, there was a large research paper that was done that was estimating that $8 billion a year was being spent on diversity efforts. Well, here's my question to you. $8 billion in 2003, it's 2021, right? So we're like 18 years down the line, and we still don't have diversity in the C-suite. And I think that that's really important to talk about, right? Like we keep throwing money at it, and it's not happening. So we have to ask ourselves, what is wrong with, what are we doing wrong as not only as an industry, but as a country of businesses, small businesses, large businesses, medium businesses? What are we doing wrong? And I really believe, this is why the entire suite of papers is called Building New Foundations. I really believe that it's because we haven't done the foundational work in our companies to get to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that foundational work is anti-racist work in our businesses. Across the board, everybody, every single company needs to be making sure that they're doing that kind of work. And then I think we will eventually get to DEI, and we won't need to spend $8 billion a year on it.
$8 billion. I think the number that was in the paper is 85% of leadership roles are still held by white men, despite over $135 billion.
That's right.
Stunning, right? So, right, and this anti-racist work being what needs to happen, what needs to be done, so that we don't look back in 10 years and go, well, we spent another $100 billion. We're still exactly where we started.
Right. And that's looking at all levels. Like you have to look at the levels of all the things that we're doing. Like as women, as people of color, as BIPOC women, what are those glass ceilings that we're hitting? What happens with that? I think that MJ Biz Daily came out with a report maybe last year where it said, look, 36% of the CEOs or the C-suite in the cannabis is women. But what they didn't do is break down what that was. How many of those women are Black women? How many of those women are Mexican women? How many of those women are LGBTQ women? And when you start to break that out, you're going to see 2%, 4%, 6%. And so I want to make sure that as an industry, we're not patting ourselves on the back as if we've done something when we still have those same kind of anti-racist ideals that are still in our industry that we have to really address.
Christine, I think we have just a few more minutes, but I wondered if we could talk a little bit about cancel culture. This is a big topic, and I just want to hear from you. What is your perspective? I really appreciated in our prior conversations you're sharing your paradigm for how you see this, and how we can address this for folks to get them to walk their walk, or walk their talk in a more compelling way.
Yeah, I think that there's places both for calling out and calling in. So that's the thing that you have to figure out what works for you. But one of the things is that really Kelly Paris, who's one of the co-authors on this, really taught me over the course of the last 9 months of really working deeply with her, was that you have to be able to set aside your shame around systemic racism, right? Because everybody was born into this already system, this institutionalized racism. What your responsibility is to understand that you're benefiting from that, and then work tirelessly to make sure that you're doing everything in your power for your company, whether you're a C-suite person or a bud tender, to make sure that that doesn't exist in your company. And so part of that is being able to call people in when you see that's not actually caring about the fact that people were incarcerated for this and are just out here, raising $2 billion in SPAC money so that they can pick up distressed assets from people of color. Maybe you stop and think that's not the right way to do it. And you don't go and say, like, I don't want to go on Instagram and be like, you suck. I want to be like, how can I teach you to take all this money that you've gotten and really put it back into the communities that built the industry? And that has been the theme for this 4 hours. If you look at it, Vlad said it, Chris said it, and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to reiterate it. You will not be successful, not successful as you can be, and leave tons of money on the table and hurt lots more people unless you work to become an anti-racist and inclusive industry and company.
Amen. Amen. Christine, can you take us through some of the actionable items on this report? Can we talk through a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So some of the key actionable takeaways from the C-suite paper that we put there specifically for CEOs, CMOs, CFOs is, hey, look at your bias. You need to do some anti-bias training. One of the biggest things that hurts companies is that they don't even know they have the bias, right? It's so deeply ingrained into how we were brought up. Think about this is your brain on drugs, right? You implicitly, now that's in your brain, right? Chris talked about that. It's in your brain. And now you're like, when you see somebody that's smoking a joint, you might have an instinct like, oh, they're not smart, or oh, they're not productive. That's an implicit bias that you have, not because somebody said that to you, but that's the framework in which you were born and you grew up in, and that's what you have. So we have a lot of information about anti-bias training, not only for your company, but also just for yourself. Because even if your company's like, I don't really think that that's worthwhile, you as a person should think it's worthwhile and do that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And other key recommendations for, again, and I brought this up in subsequent sessions, like we have a large systemic, philosophical, and political movement that we have to work on, right? All of us, all the time, to dismantle systemic racism. But then there's also the reality of we have businesses to run today, tomorrow. We have bills to pay. We have, stacks of resumes to go through and hiring to be done. So can you talk also about sort of the applicable practices we can bring into our organizations, today and tomorrow?
I think that one of the biggest things that you can do today is understand that, yes, I run a business as well. Yes, it's very expensive to run a cannabis business. And if you don't do this work at the beginning, it's going to be much more expensive for you later. So one of the things that we talk about in the toolkits is, who do you reach out to get this kind of training for your staff, for yourself, for your C-suite? That's literally something that you can do right now. And it's not as expensive as buying, you know, a manufacturing piece of equipment. So your workforce should be invested the way you invest in your equipment, even more so.
Yes, you would think so. You would think so. Anything else, Christine, that you feel like in context to the work you've done with NCIA and Arcview? Can you talk a little bit about how people can access these papers? Where can we download them? Are there going to be discussion groups or ways that folks can get tuned in and plugged in around this research?
Yes, actually, if you put up the screen that has the downloadable link, they can right now go and download the C-suite paper. There's going, oops, that's another, sorry. This particular one is for an event we're having tomorrow on Clubhouse with Kelly Perez as the guest, one of the writers of this, which is awesome. So please, if you're in the Clubhouse tomorrow,
that looks good too.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. You can also download the Gender Parity in the C-suite at this link, which is live right now. And then the other 4 papers will be going live next week. And then on February 5th, we're going to be having a webinar with all of the authors on there. And you can get to that, to register for that from that link.
Excellent. And we will put that into our newsletter as well, and make sure that everybody who's here today can get registered for that. As I said to folks, this is really the beginning of conversations we're going to be having this year, next year, as we continue to live into the reality as we build this industry. Christine, thank you so much. This was incredible. So good to be here with you. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.